Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Stir Podcast. I'm your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin, and back with me for another film-tastic episode is my Binge Bestie, author, entertainment columnist, and sitcom producer, Debbie Baldwin. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Trish. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we are happy to have you here. It wouldn't be the SIP series without you, my friend. So, Deb, we have made it through another week of this super strange odyssey we're calling the year 2020. And, we're really just a few days away from the Thanksgiving holiday, which most definitely will look and feel a little differently this year, don't you think?
It will. And it's, I think it varies on, state to state what different policies are regarding gatherings, but
Yes.
It's going to be strange no matter what, I think. So, unless you're going for sushi with with a friend.
That sounds like a really good plan right about now, because, really, depending on how you feel about your family, your relatives, this year's get-together may not be as wonderful as in years past, or some of you are actually looking forward to getting a break from certain extended family members.
Yes.
So,
yes,
exactly.
I have to go to Aunt Millie's this year.
So that is what is bringing us to this week's must-see list of movies. It's all about families, well, dysfunctional families. Deb, how did we figure this?
Well, I assumed that home videos were not permitted, first of all. So my own little tales of dysfunction are not included. When I started to kind of peel the onion on this topic, the list of films is, because really, let's face it, it makes a movie interesting. It's fertile soil for filmmakers, all kinds of dysfunctional families. From a movie like Carrie,
yes,
with a highly dysfunctional family situation, to really light, hilarious comedies that, it's every genre. It transcends every, horror, action. Die Hard has a dysfunctional family to a certain degree. Dramas, of course. So I tried to pick films that focus on the dysfunction within the family being the actual topic of the film. So while Die Hard is a fantastic film and arguably a Christmas movie, it is not technically a dysfunctional family film.
But talk about, like you said, fertile ground there. If you think that every family is somewhat dysfunctional in its own little way,
what is functional, right?
Exactly. So our first film, this, Debbie, is the most acclaimed divorce film of all time, according to Vanity Fair. In fact, it was the highest grossing film of 1979, most nominated film at the Oscars that year with 9 nominations, took home 5, including the main categories. And we are talking about Kramer versus Kramer.
And I have to say, Kramer versus Kramer was such a kind of prophetic film in 1979 to be tackling this issue of divorce and custody and just the strain that divorce puts on parenting. And ultimately, the decision to get a divorce, which in the film is not taken lightly, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel. All of those themes that come through in this film are fantastic. Then you've got Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep. Boom. Blow this movie out of the water. The acting is incredible. Really, it's a Dustin Hoffman, Justin Henry film. It's the father-son story that is compelling in this. Meryl Streep, to a certain degree, the mother is the bad guy. She left, she disappears, she reemerges, she drives a rather contentious custody battle. And Dustin Hoffman's the more sympathetic character, kind of growing into his primary caregiver role, which again, at the time for a father was not the norm. So it's just a great movie. It's so charming and endearing, this relationship between this boy and his father, and all those little quirky, crazy, normal things that go wrong when you're parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Henry, you cannot ignore the cuteness of this kid that they cast in this role. He is the youngest to this day, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the youngest Oscar nominee
for Best Supporting Actor,
at the age of 8.
Yes.
He had one other significant film role. Do you know what it was, Trish?
No, I do not.
He plays Molly Ringwald's shit-disturbing brother.
16 Candles?
16 Candles.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Brother. So, and I think he's done other work over the years, but I think he's shifted his life away from
role
the camera.
because you just wanted to slap him.
Oh, well, I know. As opposed to in Kramer versus Kramer, where you just
exactly.
But yeah, it's that this film deserves every accolade it's received. It still stands up today.
Yes.
It's a great movie.
All right, so we were talking about that film, really concentrating on the father-son dynamic. This next film explores the mother-daughter dynamic. I mean, mother-daughter relationships at their most basic are already complex, but you throw in the fact that your mother is a world-famous movie star, and you could end up with something like Mommy Dearest, Debbie.
Okay, now I have to chuckle because I have always thought of this film as just a fantastic, campy, popcorn, Friday night. I don't know, maybe it's because I did a lot of theater as a young adult.
No, I think campy is a way to describe it. It's got that type of cult following.
And I always kind of would say to friends that Faye Dunaway should have been nominated for an Oscar for this portrayal of Joan Crawford in this film that's based on Joan's adopted daughter, Christina Crawford's, and I say adopted because it's significant here, her autobiography of the same name.
Yes.
Which is a hideous expose on the just awful, borderline abusive, certainly emotionally abusive parenting that Joan Crawford does with these two. I mean, you've heard the phrase trophy wife. These are almost trophy children.
Yeah.
And it's a painful film to watch at times. But it's also wildly entertaining. And
apparently Americans were so fascinated by it. One of the biggest selling memoirs in American history was this book from which this movie is based.
Yeah, and it's a peek behind the curtain at a life of an iconic woman. I mean, Joan Crawford, my God, what a talent. Right. And but this little glimpse into her private life is certainly haunting. And there's a little moment at the end of the film where it's no secret that Joan Crawford disinherited her children when she died. And it's just this kind of bittersweet, this memoir is sort of the last word that Christina and her brother Christopher get to, kind of drive in the final stake after living this, hideous life with this woman. Right. So Joan Crawford's talent aside, this dysfunctional family in the worst sense makes for a fascinating film. And it's campy and it's over the top and it's a great Halloween costume if you're looking for one.
With wire hangers.
These iconic lines, the wire hangers. The mother goes just insane when she discovers her daughter's using wire hangers in her closet. The one we always liked was when she's yelling at the staff about cleaning the floor and she moves the potted plant and there's a circle of dirt and she's screaming at the staff that if you want to clean the floor, you have to move the plants. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, whew, so.
It was heavy. You know, apparently it took quite a toll on Faye Dunaway. She herself has said that this role was a really, really heavy emotional toll on her. She has said that she regretted taking this role, blamed it for the decline in her career.
Yeah, well,
and
it
to
was
this
not,
day, she won't talk about the film.
and it was not well received. I mean, this film won a Razzie, which
Yeah.
is the worst film Oscars of the year.
Right.
I mean, it has certainly rebounded over the years. It is a cult classic now for sure, and not because it's bad. I mean, the acting of the performances for all across the board are fantastic, and the movie's really, really entertaining. So, maybe she, over time, I mean, the film was 30, it's now coming up on 30 years. So maybe she can find some, resolution with it, but.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that kind of dark, heavy-ish film, we're going to move on to an all-out comedy here. And this film, seriously, Deb, we're talking about Vacation. And I'm thinking like the Vacation franchise, because I'm just seeing this family's dysfunction grow with each movie. And we're talking about the Griswolds, led by Chevy Chase. Clark.
And I have to say, when I was checking the dates on these films, I was a little shocked. The order of the sequels was not what I had thought it was.
Oh, okay.
So the first film is 1983's Vacation.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not even going to get into the different actors who play the kids in every movie, because it's this ongoing, like, laughable thing with Vacation fans. They change in size and shape and height and age, and so anyway.
Birth order, even, I think.
Right. And the first film, 1983 film, is Harold Ramis directs, of Stripes and Ghostbusters fame, and part of that sort of comedy cadre of, the Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Belushi, Chevy Chase, that sort of SNL, Animal House group. Continues on here with Harold Ramis directing Chevy Chase, and this story about a family road trip in the family station wagon. And the 1983 film is the first film. The second film is European Vacation,
yes,
which was 1985. The third film was Vegas Vacation, which was 1987. And the fourth film was Christmas Vacation, which was 1989.
Okay, see, I wouldn't have figured that either. I would have think some of those would be switched.
Me too.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then don't dismiss the remake. A lot of times these remakes, you're like, wah wah. And the first Vacation's so iconic and so funny.
Sure.
Randy Quaid, everybody, it's the, nobody can dismiss his performance. It's the shining light comically in this film is just that 1-2 punch of funny, as opposed to this ongoing thread that Chevy Chase manages to carry throughout the film. But the 2015 remake, if I had to choose two actors, if a genie came out of a bottle and said, you're remaking Vacation, you pick any two actors to play the two main characters, who would you pick? It would be Ed Helms of The Office and Christina Applegate. And those are the two that take over the Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo roles. And so I haven't seen the remake, but I have hopes for it.
It wasn't bad. Of course, you're always thinking about the original, because how could you not?
Yeah.
I was actually pleasantly surprised. So there was some dysfunction offset, Deb, on the set of this comedy. So, when they were doing that road trip, the temperatures on the road during filming, they hovered more than 110 degrees. So tempers flared on set. There's, something that happened reportedly between Chevy Chase and Harold Ramis that caused Mr. Chase to throw a suitcase at the director. So that was one incident. Cast and crew were passing out from the heat. Imogen Coca, who played Aunt Edna, if that's,
Uh-huh.
yes. Okay, so she suffered a stroke during filming
Oh dear.
and, had to be taken to the hospital. She recovered and went back to work. But, she couldn't remember her lines or really remember which scene she'd done. So she had to really recover from that. Anthony Michael Hall, who played the first Rusty,
Right.
suffered heat stroke and had to go to the hospital. So there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny you mention these names, Aunt Edna and Rusty, and I immediately start to laugh. It's like hard not to laugh when you're telling this sort of somewhat tragic story about what happens. And I'm like, oh, right. Don't laugh at that. Don't laugh
that's
at Aunt
part of
Edna's
a great
joke.
comedy, though. Just the mere mention of the movie title
Yeah.
brings a smile to your face or makes you laugh out loud.
Yeah.
All right, another one of those movies is our next movie. Talk about dysfunction. This couple wanted to start a family, but they started their family with a stolen baby. So that really sets you up for a world of dysfunction.
I need a toddler, huh? It's
Wow, how long have you been working on that? Pretty perfect.
Yeah, since 1987.
We are talking about Raising Arizona.
And this movie is Joel and Ethan Coen stepping squarely into the comedy genre. They do a lot of movies that kind of tiptoe around comedy. They're black comedies. There's a comic component to the storyline. This is the laugh out loud Joel and Ethan Coen movie. I mean, I know people will say The Big Lebowski, but this is the movie that, for me, is just the apex of Joel and Ethan Coen's comedy.
I agree.
Nicolas Cage is a recidivist, as they say in the film, a repeat offender, which is a good word. SAT, if anyone's studying for the SATs. Holly Hunter is a police officer. They fall in love when Nicolas Cage's character H.I. is arrested, and they get married and cannot conceive. At the same time, they discover that the furniture mogul of their town, Nathan, Arizona, his wife has miraculously given birth to quintuplets. And they decide that the Arizonas have too many babies. They got more than they can handle. So they break in and they kidnap one of the quintuplets. They're going to raise as their own baby. And then all hell breaks loose. Nicolas Cage's character is unfulfilled in his regular Joe job and is missing his life of crime. Two of his accomplices break out of prison and find him in his trailer. It's just, the baby gets kidnapped and taken back, and I mean, it's just, every scene is hilarious. The acting's fantastic. The way these characters dive into these roles, it's their seriousness that makes the movie work.
Yes, I mean, you could really tell they were into those characters. The McDonoughs.
Image of Nicolas Cage buying those Huggies in that convenience store with the nylon over his head as he's about to rob it. It's just, if you're a fan of Joel and Ethan Coen, if you're a fan of just great weird comedy, this is a great movie to watch.
Yeah, it was definitely weird, but yeah, just lots of laugh out loud moments.
For sure.
Memorable characters. And how could you, forget Holly Hunter's accent? My goodness.
She's so, she's priceless. And it's funny because you can sort of see the echoes of Frances McDormand's character in Fargo.
Yes.
In Holly Hunter's, that original female police officer of the Coen brothers' conception. So it fits in nicely with the filmography of the Coen brothers.
It sure does. So our next film, Deb, when you were creating this list, I was thinking, oh, she better have this film because this is the one that automatically comes to mind for me, Parenthood.
Yeah. And if we say, if you and I going through the weeks had said like Hannibal Lecter is the villain, or, the various films for each category, there's always sort of one for us that
The
kind of
one film, yes.
defines it. And for this category, 1989's Parenthood is absolutely the film that defines it. And I'm like, wouldn't that be funny if you were talking about a different film? I'm like, your face for a second was like, wait, that wasn't what I was thinking of.
Right.
Like, oh, shit.
No, but there's another one on this list that I'm in complete agreement with you, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But Parenthood, my God, it had everything going for it.
Yes, it was, first of all, the cast list reads like a guest list at an Oscar party. It is Steve Martin, Tom Hulce, Jason Robards, Diane Wiest, Rick Moranis, Martha Plimpton, Joaquin Phoenix in a very early role, if not
he
his
was
debut
listed,
role.
he was credited as Leaf Phoenix. It was his final credit as Leaf before he switched on to Joaquin.
Right, and that the family, the parents, as everyone knows that story, that those kids, they grew up in kind of a hippie community, and the kids were River, who passed away in the 80s, a brilliant actor. Then Joaquin, who was born or named Leaf originally, and then they have a sister, Sky.
Yes.
So yeah, he was originally billed as Leaf. I remember it. I remember seeing it in the theater. Keanu Reeves is in this movie.
Keanu Reeves in this movie.
I mean, talk about a blast from the past. You go and you see these characters, and a lot of them in fairly dramatic roles. I mean, certainly Joaquin Phoenix's role is very serious. The film is so beautiful. It's not hard to watch. It's relatable to any parent because it covers almost every dynamic of parenting. It's Diane Wiest is the single mother with the difficult child and the rebellious daughter who's dating the guy she doesn't approve of. And Steve Martin is the type A, hyper controlling, can't get a handle on parenting, because when you're that kind of a personality,
right,
what's the one thing you can't control?
And they're obsessed that there's something wrong with their little boy, which actually leads the little boy to go into therapy. The poor boy.
and I'm telling you, there's a scene in this film when Steve Martin loses his retainer, and they go digging through the garbage, the dumpster, the mother and father trying to find this $400 retainer. And Steve Martin walks over to a spigot and he turns on the water and he's frantically washing his hands under the stream of water. He's, what's wrong with him? Where does he get this behavior? And it's so sincere and honest. And the audience, you see it and you laugh and like whether or not you're a parent, whether or not you are an uncle or an aunt or a sibling, it's relatable and it's so beautiful, the story. I mean, then you've got the Rick Moranis character with the little girl who is exceptional, and they are trying to create this little genius and planning her college career out at the age of 4 or 5. There's so many there's the Jason Robards character with the overindulgent,
he's the patriarch of the family.
I mean, it's and the film takes on that kind of a quality of a Love Actually or Valentine's Day, with all these separate little storylines that all overlap and intertwine. So if that's the kind of film that's appealing, this is the acme of movies like that. It's just.
But the setup is so great because they're all part of this extended family, the Buckmans. And the overarching theme, it seems like, is, each family unit, really, they're trying to make the children perfect in their eyes. Right. And when it doesn't go that way, this is when all these problems ensue. So did you know that this movie is vaguely set in St. Louis?
I did.
Oh.
I did. Yeah, it's nice. It's got a little, there's not a lot of recognizable landmarks, but it's set in St. Louis, yes.
Yes. All right, so our next movie, my gosh, so many issues going on here. Family dysfunction as it relates to obesity, developmental delay, social interaction, alcoholism, unresolved loss, suicide, so much so, Deb, this is a case study in chronic illness for medical students. And we are talking about the film, What's Eating Gilbert Grape?
Yeah, this movie, 1993, it's a great movie. It's, it's a dark movie, but it leaves you with a lot of hope. Um, One thing that's always interesting to me is when you say to someone, who played Gilbert Grape in the movie What's Eating Gilbert Grape? 9 out of 10 people will say Leonardo DiCaprio.
Which would be wrong.
Which would be wrong. Johnny Depp plays Gilbert Grape,
Yes.
a convenience store clerk who takes care of his bedridden, morbidly obese mother and his mentally impaired younger brother,
Yeah.
Arnie, I think is the brother's name. And it's a story that's set in Iowa in kind of a middle of nowhere situation for this guy who's in this horrible situation, and he gets a little glimmer of hope every year when these kind of vacation trailers come through town, and he meets a girl played by Juliette Lewis, and he has a little romance, and in the course of this romance he leaves his brother Arnie in a bathtub to go meet this girl. And when he comes home the next morning, the boy is still in the tub, freezing cold now, terrified. It spawns this aquaphobia and just another layer of this like horrible dysfunction that's going on in this family. This brother Gilbert, who is rightfully discontent. I mean, he is been saddled with this awful burden, largely due to the mother, who he has a ton of pent-up rage over because she can't leave her bed after her own husband's suicide. So it's a lot. This movie is a heavy film. It's brilliantly acted, and the Academy recognized it, as did the Golden Globes and the BAFTAs. And but it's a kind of a beautiful film, and it's certainly easy on the eyes.
Yeah.
The actors, and this it's kind of a nice, hopeful film, surprisingly.
Right, despite all that, it really is.
Did a really nice job massaging the screenplay a little and coaxing the best performances out of these actors to give you a real sense of the situation they're in and finding some hope for these characters.
Yeah, I was prepared to be depressed about this movie.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, in the end, you realize, there are a lot of people out there going through their own kind of pain. And when you see it presented that way, you just kind of, I don't know, it left you with a better feeling than going into it, I would say.
Yeah, especially like you go in with a bar set, like prepared. Like there's a lot of those movies. $1 Million Baby, I can remember going into just bracing myself,
Yeah.
And I think it helps, like if you know a little bit.
Exactly. Okay, so this movie, Dysfunction or not, one of my favorite movies, one of those movies where I will stop everything I'm doing, sit on the couch and watch it until the very end. And that is The Birdcage from 1996 with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, which I did not know this was his breakthrough movie. He didn't really star in any major films prior to this.
Nathan Lane?
Yeah.
Yeah. He is so fantastic. And then like now we get him in Modern Family where he's Pepper, Mitch and Cam's party planner friend who's the best.
He is wonderful, yes.
Now, I want to be very clear when discussing this movie. The dysfunctional family in the film, in my opinion, is the Gene Hackman, Diane Wiest family, the parents of Callista Flockhart, who is marrying Dan Futterman, who is the biological child of Robin Williams. Robin Williams is gay and runs a drag club in South Beach, Miami, and his partner, Nathan Lane, is his star attraction at the drag club. Her
Darina,
Darina
stage name, yeah.
is, and I mean, is literally the most fabulous when she is at home and is this sort of Barbara Bush persona, is one of the most delightful, enjoyable performances to watch.
I completely agree.
And I feel the same way about it. Whenever it's on, I can absolutely watch the entire thing. I mean, leading Gene Hackman, who's a conservative Christian right-wing U.S. senator, through the conga line in the drag club. And
so you're talking about this family, the Keeleys, which is the senator's family.
Yes.
But Deb, you know, I would have to argue, you're asking your gay parent to pretend they're straight so as not to upset this ultra conservative family. There's a little bit of stuff going on there too.
Yes, and that's, you know, I don't know if that qualifies as a dysfunctional family, but there's certainly, you know, the Dan Futterman character's biological mother, who's played in a nice cameo by Christine Baranski, who's trying to come in and save the day. Meanwhile, Nathan Lane is going into his drag Barbara Bush persona to be, you know, his mother, pretending to be his biological mother for the conservative senatorial family. So yeah, I mean, there's dysfunction on both sides, but by and large, your heart is kind of with the Robin Williams, Nathan Lane relationship a little more than, and Diane Wiest has a great turn as Mrs. Keeley, the senator's wife, who's finally had enough of hypocrisy or whatever you want, of the lack of communication in their marriage, or of being the silent supporter, and decides it's time for her to have a little bit of a backbone. The movie is a comedy of errors. The paparazzi's chasing after the senator, trying to figure out what's he doing in a South Beach, you know, club at, you know, the middle of the night. And there's just a lot of great comedy. Mike Nichols directs. He knows how to direct this kind of film. He could probably do it in his sleep. It's,
probably.
I think the film is based on the play. I think the play came first.
Yes.
And yeah, but it's
definitely knew to handle his stars expertly, because, you know, if you're talking about Robin Williams and Nathan Lane in one room together, things could kind of get out of control. And so the deal that Mike Nichols made with them is that if you guys, he required them to shoot at least one take where they stick to the script. And if they do that, then they are able to improvise and do whatever they need to do to get it out of their system. But he required them to stick to the script at least for one good take.
I mean, to be a fly on the wall.
I know.
Filming, my God. I mean, I love it. It's just, it had to have been, I mean, and then you get Gene Hackman, who, this is not his only appearance on this list, which is a little surprising because you think he's such an intense actor, but he's fabulous in The Birdcage. And yeah, so the whole cast is incredibly strong and deep. So there's a lot of talent there to go with a great story.
Yes, definitely. So you talked about Gene Hackman, and his other movie is the next one on our list. This one is a Wes Anderson movie. I mean, but really, Deb, which Wes Anderson movie isn't Dysfunction on? Isn't any?
I know.
Any and all of them?
It's this, I think, is the movie that put him on the map, though. Yeah. The Royal Tenenbaums was a 2001 film that is almost indescribable. It is the quintessential film of dysfunction, and it may actually be tied with Parenthood. When you think about it, it is literally a film about family dysfunction, and it's a comedy. The cast, again, is, I mean, quite an impressive list. Danny Glover, Gene Hackman, Angelica Houston, Ben Stiller, Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson, Gwyneth Paltrow. Who am I forgetting?
I think you've got
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
And it's the story, and please remember Wes Anderson when I'm telling you the story, the plot, because he's sort of like the Hans Christian Andersen of filmmakers. He puts this colorful, fairy tale-like weirdness of facade on his films that is so fantastic.
Yes, it's almost like a convoluted fairy tale.
Right. I can't even, it's hard to put into words, but it's hard to articulate. But so this film is about 3 children of Royal Tenenbaum, who's played by Gene Hackman, and his wife, who's played by Angelica Houston. And the 3 children are each exceptional in their own way. The daughter, who's played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who is he refers to throughout the film as his adopted daughter, which is the first sign of serious dysfunction. Is a talented playwright, and the sons, the Ben Stiller character, is a brilliant mathematician, and the Luke Wilson character was a tennis prodigy. They have all fallen into decline. Their glory days have passed, and they're all
greatness had peaked.
Yes, they peaked young.
Yes.
And they all sort of are struggling with adulthood. The father, Royal Tenenbaum, left the family and abandoned them, and now has returned after he has been kicked out of the hotel where he's living, and is throwing himself on the family's mercy, claiming to have stomach cancer. So, meanwhile, the family accountant, who's played by Danny Glover, has proposed to Angelica Houston, and she is accepted. So there's this massive dynamic of insanity going on. These 3 kids and all their varied relationships with their father. Angelica Houston finally getting a little me time with her, the new man in her life, and then Gene Hackman's character trying to make up for everything.
Time, I guess.
Wrong, having no tools in his toolbox to know how to do it, basically. And as sort of dark and heartwarming as that description sounds, the movie is weird and hilarious, and every second of it is riveting. I mean, it is one of the best films. It's definitely on my, top list of all films, regardless of genre. It's just one of those really, really special movies.
And I think the reason it worked really well for Gene Hackman, it kind of gives you a glimpse into his real life too. He was a little hesitant to take on this role because he had said it made him uncomfortable, and it made him think about how insensitive he had been to his real life family. So he didn't want them to relive any of that bad stuff or feel bad, but it was actually his family who encouraged him to take the role. So
that's interesting. There's a quote of Wes Anderson's that I love, which is that he says that talking about the role of Royal Tenenbaum and he wanted Gene Hackman from the get-go. I know how you always give us those great, they considered Rod Steiger for the role. They considered so-and-so for the role. No, this was a Gene Hackman thing from the get-go. And Wes Anderson was quoted as saying, the role was written for him against his wishes.
Yeah.
And that is, it fits in so perfectly with the dynamic of this whole film.
Exactly.
That it's of course it would be an actor who didn't want to play the part, who's got issues with his own family.
There you go.
Royal Tenenbaums is a 10 out of 10. It's a fantastic movie.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, speaking about 10 out of 10, this is another one of those movies, Deb, where I just thought all the performances were pitch perfect.
I know what you're going to say.
It's stellar. And it was all done on an $8 million budget. It's made more than $1 million.
Say it together. 1, 2, 3. Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh my gosh, what a film. What a film.
I mean, those are horror movie stats. That $8 million budget with $100 million gross. You wonder why all these crappy horror movies come out in October. It's because they're incredibly cheap to make and they make money. I mean, why wouldn't you? And Little Miss Sunshine, rarely does an independent film deliver that kind of return. And rarely do actors of this caliber work for so little money.
Yes.
Yeah, so Little Miss Sunshine, which, oh my God, what a
Talk about a setup for dysfunction.
The daughter, who's played by Abigail Breslin in her debut performance. And
Olive was her name.
Olive.
Yes.
Discovers that she's been selected as a competitor in the Little Miss Sunshine kids beauty pageant in Redondo Beach, California. And the family, in an effort to support her, including the grandfather, who's played by Alan Arkin,
the very foul-mouthed grandfather,
who has been kicked out of his retirement home because he was caught snorting heroin. And it is honestly one of my favorite lines in any movie ever. I'm going to screw it up because I haven't looked it up in years, but they're talking about drugs. Now, drugs are bad, and the grandson says, like, you do, and he goes, I'm old, I should be doing drugs. And it's so priceless. Just this he's this just quirky, offensive,
the way he delivered that line,
and it's just absolutely hilarious. And then this horrible road trip. I mean, do you remember I remember sitting there, and they've got this VW bus, and it will only go into gear and run if it's going 20 miles an hour already. So the entire family is out on the highway pushing this damn car, trying to get it to start.
Now imagine doing that for an 800-mile stretch. That's the road trip they had to endure in this little yellow van. And my gosh, as if sending your young daughter to a beauty pageant wasn't dysfunctional enough. You have this cast of characters who in their own way had something up with them.
Yeah, and the son who's taken the vow of silence, remember that? He's like, he's in the van, and he's going to not speak until he can become a fighter pilot. It's the most, everything about this movie is just bizarre, but it's so wonderful and real.
Yeah.
And everyone's got that uncle who, did something strange, or I don't know, they're like that brother who's got a goofy thing about him. And the little girl, Abigail Breslin, she gets in this beauty pageant, and I am telling you, that whole moment from her registering for this beauty pageant to these other little girls in the pageant to her talent performance to the final moments in the film are some of the best comic genius moments. The irony, the intelligence of the way the whole thing is shot and acted, and the message it conveys, everything. It's so spot on, just nail on the head stuff. Chef's kiss.
Just really got a sense of the realness of it.
Yeah,
which was just wonderful. And Abigail Breslin was only 6 when she was cast for this movie, but her performance was just so heartwarming and so real.
Yeah, she's incredible. She makes the film, absolutely. She's the glue. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. All right, so our next movie, boy, I don't even know how to describe it, but it is Death at a Funeral from 2010, which is a remake of a 2007 British film of the same name. And it's a tale of 2 brothers. And in this instance, it was Martin Lawrence and Chris Rock as the 2 brothers.
Yes, and I will say both films are great. The 2007 version, directed by Frank Oz, is British.
Yeah.
Very good, very different. Different vibe, different comedy vibe.
Yes.
Then you got the 2010 version, directed oddly enough by Neil LaBute, which, if you know LaBute's work, this is a little outside of his wheelhouse, let's just say.
Right. Yeah.
This movie stars Chris Rock and Martin Lawrence as the 2 brothers. One is successful, one is struggling. They're back in their hometown and their family home for their father's funeral. And I mean, it's just a great, are you familiar with the Broadway play Noises Off?
Yes.
It's that same kind of doors opening, doors closing, people missing one
True.
another, people on the roof. Like, it's just this sort of constant insanity, revolving door of crazy that
Yes.
is so hilarious. And then Zoe Saldana plays the sister. I think she's a cousin.
She's a cousin.
Coming back for the funeral with her boyfriend, who's played by James Marsden, who takes what he thinks is a Valium, and it turns out to be like LSD, and he's tripping through the whole thing. Then, and interesting enough, Peter Dinklage plays the same character in
both movies.
Versions of this film.
Yes.
Is the brother of the dead man who is blackmailing the family to prevent the photos of their affair from being made public.
The incriminating photos that he had brought with him to the funeral.
So, you know, there's people tied up in the basement. There's people that they think are dying who aren't dying. There's people on the roof. There's people.
Yeah. You know, I saw the original first right around the time it came out, and, you know, just loved it, just the sheer hilarity of it. And then saw this film a few years later, still had that same funny to it, you know. Even if you knew what kind of sort of happens, it still has a freshness to it that, you know, it was still fun to watch.
And a lot of the credit goes to Chris Rock and Tracy Morgan, who plays the friends, because those two men could stand on an empty film set with their hands in their pockets, and I would still be laughing. I don't know what it is about them, but they are so naturally funny that they can deliver material with that confidence that you just kind of sit back and relax and know you're going to laugh. That's the kind of movie it is.
Well, and the strange thing about it is for the most part in this movie, Chris Rock plays a straight man, you know.
Yeah.
Not
but you
really
know what I mean? Like, it's
funny.
this aura, right? It's like, you can't not be funny.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it was so much fun, and, you know, Peter Dinklage in both movies, just such a treat. It was. I was pleasantly surprised. You know, I had forgotten that I saw the original, and so when I was watching this movie, thinking,
I had forgotten too.
Yes, this looks very familiar. Sounds very familiar, and then you see Peter Dinklage.
Well, I was gonna say, and then there's one kind of unforgettable moment in the film with the coffin that I'm like, oh my God, I've seen a version of this movie before.
Yes, I think that's around the time when I figure out, okay, this is the same movie, only a couple years apart. Yes, so that is.
And they're both really good. Yeah.
Okay, so the final film on our list was the movie of the year from 2019, and we are talking about the movie Parasite. And Deb, you know, again, it's one of those things. Which are you talking about? Which family here in terms of dysfunction?
Right.
You know, we have a tale of two families: the Kim family, the impoverished family, and then the wealthy Parks. Yeah, by the end of the film, the term parasite, I would think, can reapply to either family.
And I think that in my mind, and I think in the director's mind, Bong Joon-ho, the message of the film is that poverty breeds dysfunction, that these people are dysfunctional because they have to be, in a weird way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of social commentary in this film, and as you know, it rightfully won the Academy Award in 2019. I'm not a huge fan of this film, but I understand why it's good. I would not, if it came on, I don't know if I'd watch it again. It's incredibly dark. It's brilliant. There's no question it's brilliant. And it is dysfunctional, and there's no argument about it.
Yeah.
I think the family, the Park family, the wealthy family, is less dysfunctional, and the reason being, again, and this is intentional on the filmmaker's part, that their money has purchased a certain degree of functionality within the family, if that makes sense.
It
And
does, yes.
and I can't like give you a list of specifics in the film, but you'll understand the general concept when you see it. When things are difficult, you pay to fix them.
Sure, yes.
And the way this Park family is paying to fix them is by hiring this group of almost con artists, the
Yeah.
Kins, as various roles in the family staff, the tutor, the housekeeper, the chauffeur, and just this movie. Part of the reason I have a bone to pick with this movie is because it starts off one way, a real setup for a comedy. I mean, you really think this, I mean, you've got to sit there and say, it's about 45 minutes into this movie. You're like, what the F is going on in this thing? And then, whoa, does it flip on its head. And
Yeah.
you get the rock is lifted and you spend the last, 45 minutes of the film with the dark underbelly of the story, which is the harder truth, the social commentary. It's, weird. It's
Yeah,
a weird
it is
movie.
very strange. Like you said, you can look at it a certain way, and really the director himself, Bong Joon-ho, who also wrote the script, said that the movie
Yes.
is about the longing for a prosperous life for your family, and what happens when people discover that attaining that kind of life is difficult and it's
Yeah.
challenging. And
Yeah.
so
And,
you've got this film really captured all the horror and the sadness that
yeah.
comes with it.
And, where is that moral, ethical line? Because the legal line is not really relevant in these situations. And when you're, it's the Jean Valjean stealing the loaf of bread to feed your
Yes.
family. Who cares about the law? Where does that line of moral wrong and ethical wrong exist? And, how desperation plays into it. I mean, this family, the Kims, the opening scenes of this film with they live in this apartment that floods 4 feet deep of water.
Yeah.
Every rainy, frequently. They live in squalor.
Right.
So it's, it's a interesting exploration intellectually, certainly. Hard to watch emotionally, for sure. Yeah.
Yes, quite heavy, quite heavy. So again, depending on how dysfunctional your family is, we may have given you some apprehension about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday with these films. We certainly, though, don't want to leave you feeling bad. So, Deb, we are going to end on a sweet note. And actually, sweet and warm and fuzzy, our signature sweet treat today is homemade hot chocolate. It's
that sounds so good.
Here, comfort food, comfort drink, definitely. But we're not talking about just any old hot chocolate. We're making rich, decadent French hot chocolate.
Oh.
And, I always remember my one trip to Angelina in Paris on the Rue Rivoli. And this is what it reminds me of. And it's definitely not something that you gulp down. This is a sipping drink to be savored slowly. But Deb, this is as close to heaven as you can get. And the thing is, there's really nothing to it in terms of preparation. All you really have to keep in mind is you get what you put into it. So you just have to make sure you have high quality chocolate and just total full on whole milk. So you really get to enjoy the full sumptuousness of it.
Oh, that sounds great. I can't wait.
Yes, and
Perfect for the holidays too.
Yes, and I even have little cups to make sure you just, you don't overindulge.
I got a Stein back there for it.
So we will have that recipe for you on gazellemagazine.com. So, hey, that is the show. Deb, thank you for another great list.
Thanks, Trish.
You are welcome, and really reminded me a lot of great movies that I've forgotten over the years that are
for the holidays.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you all for watching, and we will see you again next time.